Hello, Kelly. How are you doing
Oh,
today?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
I'm doing good as well. Thank you for asking. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I don't know if there's a lot or a little. Um, just been doing video and radio since 1980. Actually got my first taste of, I guess you could say, theater when I was about 8 years old, and I ran a spotlight for
Hmm.
a little play in a park in Indiana where I was growing up. But other than that, I play guitar, used to do some painting and drawing, do computer animation, video editing, just stuff and things, as I like to say.
Okay, so you've been going around the media since 1980?
Yeah, that's when I actually got my first job in radio. And from radio, I moved to television around 84, 85. Was still on the radio periodically, but I mostly put my focus into video at that
Okay,
point.
so you have some experience under your belt, I see.
Yes, yep. I didn't go to college for anything. I've got what they call lifetime experience.
Mm.
I've been told multiple times I could go challenge a degree in broadcasting and pay the fee, take the test, pass the test, get a degree. But I've actually just been more enjoying doing it rather than wanting to have a title behind my name.
Well, that is incredibly impressive. That,
Well, thank you.
of course, of course. So I actually have a few questions here. I'm
I might
hoping you
have a
don't
few
mind.
answers. I don't know.
We will see. Awesome. All right. So, you did give us an insight on how you started in the media industry and in the film industry. Um, so I was gonna ask you if you could elaborate just a little more on that so we can get uh deeper into that story.
Okay, well, like I said, my first job in radio was around 1980 at a
Mhm.
radio station in Deming, New
Mhm.
Mexico. And essentially, it kind of got started by a little seed that got planted. When I was a kid riding around with my dad in his truck, he would listen to the radio
Mhm.
and he would always gripe and complain, oh, those DJs, all they do is talk, 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 and they talk over the song. And I was a little kid and I was joking with him. I said, well, Dad, when I grow up, I'll be a DJ and I won't talk over the songs for you. Well, when I got out of high school, did just a small amount of traveling, and my first actual job after high school was working at Kmart Car Care, taking care of oil changes and things. But I realized that's not what I wanted to do. I kind of had a feeling that I had a little bit more in me than changing oil and tires and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I went to the local radio station just out of curiosity and walked in and said, are you hiring? And they said, well, no, we're not right now. So a week later, I stopped in again. I said, are you hiring? And they said, no, we're not. I did that for about 3 months every week, going
Wow.
in and saying, are you hiring? And one of their salespeople said, you know, you ought to get a job just out of sheer tenacity.
I
Well,
agree with that.
yep. So this was going on through the summer, and we were coming up on the holiday season. So one day when I walked in, before I could even say anything, the station manager walked out and said, would you come in my office, please? And I went in and I sat down, and he said, every year we have the same problem, which is our DJs, one of them cannot attend the Christmas or holiday parties because somebody has to be on the air. Now you got to remember this is 1980.
Hmm.
Okay, there was no what we call voice tracking now, which is most of the people you hear on the radio now, they go in and for about an hour or two, they record their entire shift as a playlist, give it to a computer system, and they play the songs and insert the voice. They're not actually sitting in front of a mixing board and a microphone hardly at all anymore. So back then, if somebody did not run the station, there was nobody on the air. So he said, we're going to try this. He says, we're going to train you for one night. And then for the night of the holiday party, you're going to be the DJ, so that DJ can be at the party. So back then too, when they wanted to show you how to do something in radio,
Hmm.
the DJ that was on shift said, here's this knob, that's the volume. Here's this knob, that's your microphone. This turns it on and off. This turns it on and off. I'll see you in an hour. And he walks out the door.
Ooh. So you
And that's what he
basically
did.
just had to figure that out on your own.
Those were the only controls you needed. Okay, you started a record over here, you pushed a button, it went on the air. If you didn't turn on the switch or turn up the volume, nobody heard it. You had headphones on, you could hear what your audience was hearing. So that's essentially what he did. He did that and walked out of the room. An hour later, he came back in. He says, I've been listening, so here's what we need to work on. And we worked on a couple of things, and I was there for a couple of hours. That was how I was taught. The next day, I came in to relieve the on-air personality, and he says, okay, well, after you get done with your shift, come in tomorrow so you can get your paycheck for the job.
Hmm.
I said, cool. So I ran the station for about 4.5 hours. And then the DJ showed up at the end, because at those times you generally didn't have 24-hour stations. You had to sign off the air. So he came in, signed everything off. I also was taught how to take readings of the transmitter, because every hour you had to write down all of the numbers that the transmitter was doing. And those had to be kept as a log, because the FCC came in and audited to make sure you weren't going off frequency or going over power.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. And then also too, if you were going to be a permanent DJ, you had to fill out and get an FCC license to be an on-air personality. So I got done with that. I went home. I came in the next day. Station manager waved me into his office and was writing out, and he handed me a paycheck and he said, there you go. That's for last night. Now your shift is going to start Saturdays at 6 o'clock. And I was on the air. And that was it. That following Saturday, I started on the air, and I actually stayed overnight at the station. My shift was 6 o'clock to midnight. I signed off the station, and I lived 40 miles out of town. So I slept on the couch in the entryway,
Oh
and then signed
my.
the station back on the following day at 6 o'clock in the morning, and ran the station until about 4 o'clock. And then the other DJ would come in and he'd run the station and sign it off at night. But yeah, that's how I got into broadcasting in the beginning, and then it just kept growing from there.
So you were dedicated to that.
I enjoyed it. I really did.
Yeah.
The best advice that was given to me by the DJ was, because, he said, well, when you turn on the microphone, you're going to be talking, and you're going to be
Hmm.
talking to the people who are listening. He says, if that bothers you to think of the numbers of how many people are listening. I said, well, how many people are listening? He said about 14,000. He said, if that bothers you, he says, what you do is you pick one person. Imagine that they are the one listening to the radio, and you just talk to them. Talk
That's
to that one person.
that's smart.
Mhm.
Wow.
Haven't had a problem since. I've gotten up in actually room full of 300 or 400 people at a time and spoke, and it works. You just think of one person and you just focus on that.
So with that advice, would you also give that to young people these days that are also joining in the entertainment business?
I don't believe that the young people today quite have that speaking um, sensitivity, so to speak,
Hmm.
or anxiety. Um, most of the kids that I've known have actually really had very little trouble getting up in a group of people or wanting attention. Online media and phones and everything have changed all of that. So I don't believe that stress of talking to somebody, or what they would refer to as stage fright,
Hmm.
is really much of an issue these days.
Well, I'm glad that they're able to get around
Yeah,
stage fright and they don't have to
but really,
as much.
it's the same thing.
Yeah.
If you do find yourself in a situation, so there's lots of classes about teaching you how to speak to people and how to speak to groups. But the anxiety is not something they really address. They're assuming that if you're already wanting to do this and you're talking to somebody about doing it, then
Hmm.
you're already over that little hump of I can get up in front of people. And they want to work with you on how to properly keep the conversation and the vocals going. But if you do find that, okay, I'm in a situation, I have to stand up and I have to talk to a group of people, just picture one person, or if that person's actually in the audience, that's even better. You just talk to them, look around the room a little bit to make sure that you're encompassing the room, but you stay focused on one person, or maybe move over to another person and another person, but you address and look at one person. You don't look at the room as a whole, okay?
Hmm.
And other things that are generally spoken to you about on how to talk, and you may have heard this too. Watch out about saying huh and um, um, keep it going. Okay.
I've
Ums
actually
is
heard about
saying,
that.
I've ran out of something to say, so I'm going to make a noise.
Yeah.
But I really feel that the youth of today really have it so much better, as in terms of they're being brought into that media. Um, TikTok and your Facebooks and all of them, well, going all the way back to MySpace and things like that. That is when this evolution began in being comfortable about being seen and being out there.
I definitely agree with that. And I also think that old-fashioned advice can definitely carry you a long way.
You got to have a foundation, you got to have roots. You really
Exactly.
do. And if you
Exactly.
don't, then you're floating and you don't know what to hang on to.
Exactly. Good points. Good point there. And I think that's very important for people to learn and understand. So, with that being said, you also kind of told us that you started being interested in uh, the media industry from a young age, getting into theater and all that stuff.
Well, yeah,
So,
it was kind of an odd situation, that I just happened to be somewhere as a kid. They were putting on a play, and I was interested in fascinating it. And somebody in the place pointed at this big spotlight, and they said, "Do you think you can run that?" I said, "Well, what do you mean?" And they put me up in the chair. They showed me the little handles that you flip for
mhm,
changing the colors, and the focus rod for focusing it in. And it
mhm.
was a play in a park. And I ended up at like 8 or 9 years old running the spotlight for the play.
So is that where your interest bloomed,
It
kind of?
did. It planted that first seed of being comfortable in a public sort of environment, of having people around seeing what you're doing and seeing the effects of what you're doing. See, when you're doing something like that, not only are they watching the stage and they're seeing what you're doing on stage, but they're also seeing what you're doing running the equipment while it's going on stage. So not only were they watching the play and seeing the light I was putting on the image and on the performers, but they were also seeing me manipulating the controls to do that. So I was very aware that I was being watched at the same time.
Yeah.
And at 8 years old, that's kind of a thing. And this is a long time ago. I'm 61 years old. So this was a long time ago.
I know it was definitely because at that age, you're young, you're impressionable. So any little
Mhm.
thing when you are a part of something big, that's gonna leave an impact on you for the rest of your life.
It gave me the confidence and the assurance that I can handle something. And again, that was a very quick training thing. It's like I didn't have months to learn how to do this. I was there for like 3 rehearsals and then the play was on.
Once again, I'm saying this, I know I'm saying this for a second time, but that is very impressive. And
Well, thank you. I don't feel that, but thank you.
you're very good at what you do. If you've never gone to college for this and you've heard many times that you can challenge degrees, then yes, you are very good at what you do. The evidence is there.
Well, I've just been doing it a long time. Yeah.
Definitely. I think a lot of people can learn from your tenacity and your persistence.
Well, that's what I try to tell people when I'm teaching them is you can only go as far as you want to go with it. And if you're
Mhm.
happy with where you're going to stop, then be happy with it. But if you stop at a certain point and you just feel, I could have done more, then do more.
And I think a lot of young people, especially young people these days, need to understand that you can always excel and you can always progress. There's always room to do that.
Well, the two things that I also try to tell people that I'm teaching is one, don't stop learning.
Absolutely.
Okay, you're always learning something new and you're always doing something new.
Absolutely.
And the other thing, which is the hardest part, and you have to stop and think about it, but the main thing is learn how to learn. Be open to things. Be observant, be watchful, be a sponge. That's what I like to call my students, that when I show them something, they just soak it up and they do it. They're sponges. Is learn how to learn. Don't sit there and look at something and go, well, I already know how to do that. Because there may be a little element, you might know part of that, but there may be a little element you haven't seen, hadn't noticed, or hadn't thought about. So always be ready to learn.
I need to also be open and ready to learn because I'm guilty of doing that. Going, I know how to do this, and next thing you know, there's a step that I skipped, and now I'm tied up in something that I actually don't know about. So
Well, too, and the more that you learn, you will actually find that part of what you learned over here, which has nothing to do with something over here, but there's a little bridge right there, and you can borrow something from this and make this better.
I never thought of that way. Yeah, you learn something new every day. I'm
That's true.
definitely going
I
to
know
be.
that's an old saying and everything, but it is just there is days you're going to go through that you're going, well, I didn't pick up anything new today,
Hmm.
but next day is going to be different.
Exactly. Next day is always a new day, or tomorrow is always a new day. That's
Mhm.
the proper way of saying that. So you explained your earliest memory. You just explained it to us of working on the play in the park. But what is your earliest memory of working a camera specifically?
Okay, now I was thinking about this. My dad was a photographer. Okay, that was his something he did. He was a body man. He'd been a career body man for Ford,
Wow.
of doing body work, painting, all of that sort of thing. So I grew up around that. And my dad was also a musician. He had what was referred to as a tin ear, which is he could slightly hear the difference between a sharp and a flat, but sometimes if it was just a minute amount, he couldn't hear it. So he always had trouble tuning his guitars. But that was the other thing he did was music, but he was also a photographer. So I actually had cameras in my hand when I was like 6 or 7 and stuff. But as far as actually starting to take pictures, my first thing of actually using a camera, and of course it was my dad's camera,
Mhm.
was when I took photography in high school.
So that's where it started,
That's where it
mostly.
started, actually looking through the lens rather than just playing around with the camera, but actually looking through, getting into the dark room and developing.
Hmm.
When I was a teenager, I won a couple of high school and fair contests.
Hmm.
But then both music and photography kind of went by the way when I got into broadcasting and spent most of my time talking on the radio. And then when I actually got into television, I started in master control, but then they had an opening for a camera operator in the studio for the live news. So I said, well, could I add that to my master control um, responsibilities? And I started running camera for the news, and that moved into running audio at the mixing board, running the CG, which is the Chiron generator, put the text on the screen.
Hmm.
That moved into doing commercials and going out to shoot productions. I then asked if I could teach myself how to edit on my own time, and the station manager allowed me to come in on all this brand new equipment and teach myself how to edit. And then that slowly evolved into I started directing the news, producing shows, and that sort of thing.
Wow. So you basically grew up just around all that creative energy
Yep,
and that.
that's all started in the area of about, let's see, 22 years old, 22, 23, around that. It was around 84, 85 that I first got my first television job in master control.
Wow. So you were young when you got that job.
Yep, yep, and I've been somehow involved in media ever since, either working at radio or television stations or owning my own production company or owning my animation company that then ended up turning into a production company. Somehow I've always been behind the camera or behind an editing station some way. This is unusual for me. I don't mind talking on the radio, but this is unusual for me being in front of a camera.
Understandable. Understandable. I bet. Just like having the roles reversed and one second you're operating the camera, the next you're in front of it.
Mm.
So I was actually going to ask, yes, I was going to ask, after all this time of you editing and creating and working cameras and stuff, do you still find it exciting?
Oh yeah,
Just new projects, just
yeah.
the
Okay,
same?
now I'm gonna make a statement, and this is gonna be another one that you need to stop and think about, but understand, okay? Is all productions are the same, they're just different.
Okay, I understand what that means.
You understand what that means?
Yes, I do.
Okay, at a certain point, it's the same thing. You've got a beginning, you've got an end. You did an introduction for the show. You're asking questions during the body of the show. You're going to close the show. You're then going to sit down and edit and produce this show. But those are all the same things that you've done over and over, but this one's different. And that's the exciting part about doing this is you're on very familiar ground. You have a safety net around you. I know what I'm doing. I know how this proceeds. I know how this is going to go. But I don't know who I'm going to be doing this with. I don't know what they're going to look like or how they're going to act. I don't know how I'm going to light this. I don't know how I'm going to set the audio on this. It's going to be a different production, but I still have solid footing, solid ground that I'm standing on because I've done this before.
Was there, and going off of that,
Mm-hmm.
was there ever a time where you were on a set or doing a production where you ran into maybe an unfamiliar, not to say issue, but something that's unfamiliar, whether it was a problem, whether it was something that was just new?
Well, see, this is the whole thing about doing this is the more that you do it, the more problems present themselves, but the easier they are to solve
Hmm.
because you use something like we were talking a little while ago. You use something from a different situation that may be similar to this, and
Hmm.
a solution you use there will apply here.
So it all connects. It all
It all
kind of goes
connects,
around in
and
a circle.
the main thing is the more you do it, that bigger that circle keeps going, and those problems become a tinier dot inside that circle. If your circle's only this big, that dot is huge.
Hmm.
But if your circle is this big, that dot is tiny and very simple to solve.
You know, because obviously I'm getting into productions, and so
Mm-hmm.
hearing that was a really big relief for me.
Yep, and I remember when those productions started.
Yeah. Yes.
But no, it's just an ongoing, on-growing thing. Some things are easier to take care of now because the problem presented itself so many times. Technology has found a way to solve that and is automatically built into things.
Hmm.
One of which being is like this microphone. This microphone that I'm using here is originated in the 1950s. So the body style is metal. It is still the same microphone. Let me go ahead and show you what this microphone is. Okay. This is a Shure Super 55. Now, when they made this, the quality of the diaphragm was different because that was 1950s. The quality of plastic and everything for the diaphragms is different now. This has padding inside it that helps stop what are called plosives and sibiluses. They used to have to put a screen up in front of the microphone, a little round thing about this big with basically fish netting on it,
Yeah.
nylons.
Yeah.
Okay. So that now I'm going to purposely try to overdo this. A plosive is when you pop a pea and the air pushes out.
Mm-hmm.
So a net would set right here and it would diffuse that air as it hit the diaphragm. But
Oh,
now that's
yeah.
built inside the microphone. So when I say a plosive now, it's not as prominent.
Huh.
And that's built into the microphone. So problems that were solved by a certain situation, such as the popper stopper was the name for it, is now built into the microphone.
And what was that second thing you said?
Sibiluses.
And
Okay.
what's that?
Make a sound like a snake. Go s. That's a sibilus.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Now, most people don't do that much anymore when they're saying certain words. But in the olden days, saying certain words made a sibilus. So
Oh,
filters built into the software we're going through right now is looking for those s, and it's grabbing it and fixing it before it even passes on.
I did
So
not know that.
yeah, so that's built into Zoom and Skype and all of those. They have these filters, and it's to help stop those sort of sounds. They're also filtering out background sounds as being unwanted sounds. All of these are things that have evolved from workarounds when we had to figure out how to solve the problem. Now it's just built in automatically.
Hmm. So now it's not even really a problem that's on the spectrum.
Not very much. And it's been brought down to the level where the basic consumer doesn't even know what's in there and it's being fixed. Now, if we were to record this and give it to me and I was to process it, I would then apply more filters to make sure that I clean up certain things that I really don't want in there.
Hmm.
Because the filters that are built in are kind of automated, so they're just looking for certain things.
Yes.
But if you're wanting to really remove specific things, well, then an audio engineer has to go in and listen to it and say, okay, we're going to pull this down, we're going to bring this level up, and they're going to rework the sound.
That is a whole lot of editing, and you have to have a really good ear for that.
Well, that's the one thing about it. See, that's the reason why the field is so separated. You have audio technicians, you have lighting technicians, you have graphic technicians, you have editors, you have continuity directors, which I spoke with you guys a long time ago about, which
Yes,
is
I
a
did
person
work
just
on that.
stands there with a camera and a notebook and write down everything that's on a scene. So when they have to stop and reset the next day, they can say, okay, you were holding the coffee cup in this hand, not this hand. Okay, there only was this much liquid in it, not this much liquid. They try to spot every continuity to make sure the scene is reproducible. So there's individual jobs for everybody. When you're an independent producer like me, you study lighting, you study audio, you study camera angles, you study all sorts of different things, and you watch a lot of old movies.
It sounds laborsome, but also fun
It
because
is. It's fun. You've got to enjoy it. Okay, this is the one thing is you don't go into a medical field if your stomach flip-flops every time you look at blood.
Hmm.
Okay. You don't go into being a veterinarian or working at a vet if you want to take every animal home. Okay. You've got to have a certain level of, I have an interest, but I'm not going to get absorbed into it.
Hmm.
Okay. But pretty much everything I do somehow connects. My music connects to My creative side. My creative side connects to my writing side. My writing side connects to my producing side. My producing side connects to my camera side. My camera side connects to my photography side. So everything that I do has some sort of a connection. But the enjoyable part of it is that on my off time, I'm watching movies and television shows, and I'm getting ideas, and I'm reloading my library of things to draw from of creative influence.
So you're basically just, how do I put this? You're like a walking pile of creativity, if that makes any sense.
I've been called a walking pile, but never of creativity, but okay. Um, I would have never really considered myself as a creative person. I really never have.
Can you elaborate on that? On why?
Well, I don't know. It's just I tried to think about this because somebody else had asked me that same question. And to me, being creative takes, I don't know how to describe this too. It should be more difficult than I feel it is, so I don't
Hmm.
feel that I'm creative.
Oh,
Okay.
okay. I understand what you mean.
Okay, yeah, it just I look at, you know, people that have done beautiful creative things,
Hmm.
and they're very complicated people, and they look at things totally different, and it just I look at them and going, golly, I am not like that, so I must not be creative. It just seems to me that it should be more effort. So I just don't really feel that I'm creative.
Well, let me tell you something. Not everyone can do what you do, and not everyone can, how do I put this, support themselves and sort out, okay, so what I do over here connects to what I do over there, and it just comes all the way back around in a circle. A lot of people would be overwhelmed by all of that stuff that they have going on. So there's definitely a level of discipline that you have, and there is most certainly a level of creativity.
Well, thank you.
And so, of
I just don't feel that, but I appreciate that. Thank you.
course, of course. So speaking of, I did ask you, being on certain sets, you know, um, if there were any problems that occurred that you didn't know how to handle. Um, 1 second, I'm sorry.
Sure. Now it may get a little noisy here in a little bit. My wife's going to be home about any time,
It's all good. It's all good.
and my dogs are going to go crazy. And I know we got a late start on this, but I have to make dinner for my wife. She's got the real job. I've got the whatever it is I do job. So
It's all good. It's all good. I am not upset about that. So, as far as the productions that you worked in and everything, what locations have you worked in and what sets?
well, I'll I don't have them available right now. I'll get you some pictures because I was requested for that.
Ooh.
I worked on the El Paso set of The Day After Tomorrow with Roland Emmerich.
Okay.
Um, Me and a gentleman, he was the primary lighting man, Melco Cueva. He was hired to light the Carlsbad Caverns. Um, and this was, golly, 17, 18 years ago, roughly.
Mhm.
So he hired me as his assistant, and we lit the Carlsbad Caverns for 13 hours overnight for the Discovery Channel. And we figured that we walked around the big room. Have you ever been to the Carlsbad Caverns?
I have not, but I do want to go there.
Okay, it's gorgeous. The Carlsbad Caverns has what is referred to as the big room. It's a gigantic room, and we figured we walked around it about 25 times. We
25
were
times.
25 times, yes. And we got so much additional quality lit that we were told by the producers and the cameraman that they got 85% more usable footage than they expected.
Oh,
So,
yay.
yeah. And this was specifically for the lighting, and I think you can still find it on YouTube. Was specifically lit for the project called The Seven Wonders of the Wild West.
Mm-hmm.
But for quite a few years, any footage that you saw of Carlsbad Caverns was the lighting that he and I had done. And let's see, I've worked for CBS, the morning show. Um, that's about all I can think of that's coming to mind right now. So, but yeah, I've done a few various things.
And out of all the productions that you can remember that come to mind, what was the most impactful project that you
That
worked
would
on?
be the day after tomorrow. Because at the time that we did this, the scene, I was just local crew. Okay, I didn't have anything more than do that.
Mm-hmm.
I was referred to as a grip and a camera grip, which is specifically the easiest way to describe it. A grip has several jobs: grab something and grip it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, help build, help do this, help do that, and we shot at a couple of different locations in El Paso. And at one point, there was a massive windstorm. And the scenes that we were shooting was showing about how the weather was changing and everything.
Oh,
So
wow.
uh, we were also using a thing called Snow Business, which is a company that supplies artificial snow. And it's a canister that you light and it blows out what looks like snow, but it's not really snow. But we were using tons of that and creating a snow flurry in El Paso during the summer. And then also too, when we were out way outside of town, I'm trying to think of the little town, um, but it's a ranch that has been used multiple times for lots of movies. But while we were out there shooting the military scenes out in the desert, which was supposed to be a makeshift camp for the
Mm-hmm.
refugees trying to escape to Mexico to get away from the storm that was coming, we got hit with a huge dust storm.
Did that delay
Yes and
production?
no. They actually utilized what they wanted of it, but yes, we did have some time that we had to shut down because dust and cameras don't get along. But
Mm,
there
yeah.
was several scenes that they were looking for that to be in. But that was really one of the most impactful because of just all the different things that we were utilizing during
Yeah.
the production of the movie.
So it kind of seems like the weather helped bring it together in a way.
Yeah.
And this is a silly question. This is a
Well, I
very
was
silly
just going to
question.
say, I thought of another production
Oh, go
that
ahead.
I'd also been involved with. Christophe May, who is a French pop singer out of France,
Hmm.
and Warner France had came over here to Alamogordo, and we shot two music videos for him outside of town. And I believe those are on YouTube also, but I was involved with the lighting on that one also.
I'm gonna have to check those out. I'm gonna have to check those out now. Um, I was gonna ask a very silly question about the fake
I love
snow.
silly questions because I get to give silly answers.
So how bad is it of a mess to clean all that fake snow around? Unless
Well, luckily, I wasn't involved with the cleaning up of that, but from what I understand, it is supposed to be biodegradable. So the first
okay,
time any moisture or anything hits it, it's supposed to break down.
I did not know that. Thank you for explaining that because I was very curious about
That's what I
how
was
it's
curious
going.
about too, and that's what I was told. So,
Well, that's perfect for the environment,
yeah,
so we're good.
yeah.
So, out of all the productions and the projects you can think of, once again, I'm saying this,
Uh,
who did you get to meet? Um,
well, that's the one thing is generally there's again we're coming back to this circle. Okay,
yes.
you got your director and your talent. Then you got your people who support directly to the director.
Hmm.
Okay, and those people have a group that they work with, which is what they say this needs to be done, this needs to be done. Then that group says to this group, here's what we're doing. And I was part of this outer group, which
Hmm.
is we go get things done. Now, during the wrap party, yeah, you may encounter and meet people. Um, so yes, I did get a chance to meet Roland Emmerich
Hmm.
during the wrap party, but I was not. in an area where I had direct connection or access to them.
Oh, okay.
There is so many names behind names behind names in the entertainment industry
Hmm.
that generally you don't even see or don't even hear about. As far as the movie Day After Tomorrow, I was so far down the line. Of course, my name is not in the credits, okay, because I'm just basic local simple things. Now, some of that has changed now. Where have you noticed that credits are getting longer and longer and longer,
I
and
did notice
they're
that.
getting more broken down of this location crew, this location crew, this location crew, this overseas crew, this dubbing company who dub the voices for the overseas production.
Hmm.
It's getting more and more broken down. But when I did Day After Tomorrow, that was way back there before any of this continued to grow the way it is now.
So I can see they're finding more importance and giving, I guess, more credit. I'm sorry. Does that make any sense?
Well, there's more people that are wanting. See, that's the other thing is too, is quite often um, when if you want to continue doing that sort of thing. Now, I've done, some local movies, I've done stuff like that, but it still didn't interest me. I still like doing my thing for the local, what I call mom and pop group.
Hmm.
Okay, versus being involved with big movies. Um, I just didn't have an interest in staying in that big side of the industry. But there are people who do want to do that. And when you start bringing out your resume, they want to know where you've been, what have you done, and they especially want to know, did you get crediting? Because if you got crediting, that keeps bringing you more up the ladder, more rungs up the ladder.
Okay. Okay, that makes sense. That definitely makes more sense.
Hmm.
Okay, I'm understanding now.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Give me
That's all right. I'm looking at the same list.
So you are basically self-taught and
Self-taught, but observant. Okay. Now, self-taught can be a misleading statement. Okay.
mhm,
You don't just start absorbing and creating the knowledge. Okay. You have to be observant. You have to ask somebody questions. Okay. Now, when you are choosing that you're going to walk this path independently versus paying a institution to train you, this is different. You have to have somebody who's willing to show you the ropes and explain things. Quite often at the TV station, we would have interns who were studying broadcasting at a college. They would come and spend time with us at the station. And the first thing we would always have to say to them is, this is a real world station. The station that you work at or help out at a college has people who are studying engineering. So there's always an engineer on hand.
mhm.
Okay. There is teachers who are teaching you lighting. There is teachers who are teaching you camera work. But when you're at a TV station and something breaks, the engineer may be out of town or can't come in for a couple of days. You have to figure out how to keep it on the air until he comes in. You have to figure out how to keep the tape running. You got to figure out how to clean the head. So there's certain things that you have to learn that they're not going to show you in a college setting. They're not going to teach you how to handle everything. So we would tell these interns, this is the real world. One of the first things that you have to do is forget what you learned and be ready to learn this. This is the way it really works. So it's a little different. So if you're going to walk the path by yourself, you got to have somebody and willing, and this is multiple somebodies, not one person, but multiple people who are going to say, okay, I'll show you how I do this.
So just to go off of that,
Hmm.
basically, um, I know you did teach a certain group of people,
Oh, yeah, a certain group of people.
certain group of people, a few production tricks and twists, and
Hmm.
basically were these people. I don't know who they are. You were basically their mentor, and would you continue doing that?
Oh, yes, I love teaching. Um, I'm teaching guitar now, okay? Because I've been playing since I was 13, and again,
Mhm.
sort of self-taught. I didn't sit down and have a teacher who taught me everything. There's a long, drawn-out story about how I got into music. But one of the things that I have noticed over the past 4 years of really ramping up my amount of students is my students are making me a better player because of having to break down and explain how I'm doing things, how my experiences have evolved me into the player that I am. By emphasizing and dissecting and explaining this, it's refining it and giving it even a bigger um, latch onto how I play. And it's improving my playing by being a teacher. I love explaining video production too, because it makes me drudge up and explain what I do offhandedly without even thinking about because I've been doing it. But when I have to stop, back it down, and explain it, it helps reinforce how I do things and it just makes me better at it. So I love teaching.
I am the same way, so I understand that on a personal level.
Mhm.
So, with that being said, these days, are you getting more into music, like building, I don't know if you want to call it a career.
Well, to be truthful, I really never thought I'd be making any sort of income off of music. Music was always my, okay, I'm not doing a production, I'm stressed out about this, or I need to relax, or I just got some time on my hand, let's pull the guitar out and set and pick. That was my relaxation. Like my dad's photography was his relaxation. But um, when I started teaching and started doing more stuff like that, I found that I was really enjoying it much more and started doing more performing. And that ties back around to of being comfortable in front of people and doing things.
Mhm.
So that was never an issue of, oh, shoot, I'm going to sit down and pick and sing in front of people I don't know rather than just turning up a volume knob and saying, here's the latest by Roy Clark
Yeah.
and playing a song. So it was, I just never thought I'd be making money off of it. And I enjoy it more so than anything. Now, I still do occasional productions and I never will stop doing productions, but productions is a niche. Somebody needs something produced. They have to have confidence in what you have done if they can see your previous work to say, you can do what I want done. I want you to do it. And then pay you for the production when it's done. Um, and then once it's done, they pretty much have what they need, and it may be years before they need another production. So I'm never going to give up production, and I enjoy it immensely, but I can always find somebody, someplace to play guitar, and there's a lot of people out there that seem to want to learn how to play guitar. So finding students is just looking for the person that goes, yes, I'd love to learn how to play guitar. So I'm enjoying my guitar side now.
So, getting more into music and your enjoyment with it. Um, who was the most influential artist to you?
There's a lot of them. There's a lot of them. And this is also one of the things I try to explain to my students too is they're coming up with names and songs and stuff that I'm not directly familiar with because music is ever growing, ever evolving, ever changing. But I have told my students, you really like this group. Read about them, research them, find out who it is they enjoyed. because when they were young, there was somebody they listened to that got them going, oh, I want to be a musician. And that's where the stepping stone is. The first building block came in. I can give you names like Chet Atkins, Eric Clapton, Don Bruce, Don Williams, Ray Price. These are names that a lot of my students go, who? Okay. But then I've got a student that came in 4 years ago. I've been teaching her for 4 years. I
Wow.
started teaching her when she was 13. And when she came in and I said, so why do you want to learn how to play guitar? This is a question I ask all of my students. Why do you want to learn how to play guitar? What is it that you heard that made you go, I want to do this? And what do you want to learn? And she said, Johnny Cash.
I don't blame her.
But then I have other students that are the same age as when she started, and they have no idea who Johnny Cash is. So the circles are, yeah, the circles are constantly changing. Okay.
Yeah.
So I always say his name wrong. Ed Sheeran, love his music, but he's one of the new group, the new
Mhm.
circles. Passenger, okay,
Mhm.
Hosier. These are some of the newer ones, and I like their music too. But when you research them, they point back to Eric Clapton as being their influences. So
I've
these
never
all
heard of it.
connect. Yeah. And I try to tell them, and I give my students assignments of, I'm such a horrible teacher. I'm going to give you an assignment to listen to some music. Put some headphones on, tune out the world, and listen to just this. To give them things they have not listened to and may have not been exposed to show them how to widen that circle. Because again, the bigger the circle is, the more you can fit in it.
You know what? And see, everything that we talked about today, it all just comes back around. Well, Kelly, thank you very, very
Oh,
much
thank
for
you.
coming
Thank you very
here.
much. Yes, I
We
enjoyed this very
appreciate
much.
we appreciate having you, and thank you for sharing and giving us at least a small look into your brain.
Well,
I
it's a
know,
small brain, so there's not much to look at.
no, no, you're just complex. You're complex. And thank you everybody that is watching for tuning in, and we will be back next time. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day, continues to have a wonderful day. God bless you all, and you guys have a good night, good morning, good evening, wherever you are. Doesn't matter. Stay true and